Look, I'm gonna tell you something that's gonna make you uncomfortable. What I'm about to share in the next 20 minutes will change how you see every human interaction for the rest of your life. But here's the thing, it's not some new revolutionary discovery. It's ancient wisdom that's been sitting right there, waiting for someone to have the balls to say it out loud. 500 years ago, a man named Niccolo Machiavelli wrote down the most uncomfortable truths about human nature ever documented. Truths so raw that the Catholic Church banned his book. Truths so powerful that world leaders study them in private while publicly condemning them. And here's what's gonna blow your mind. This isn't theory. This is the actual operating manual for how people work. Not how we pretend to work. Not how we wish we worked. How we actually work. Picture this. You're sitting in a meeting and your colleague takes credit for your idea. Again. Or you're watching your friend ask for dating advice, then completely ignore it because it requires actual effort. Or you're dealing with someone who says they value honesty, but gets upset every time you're actually honest with them. You see this stuff happening, and you think, what the hell is wrong with people? Why don't they just say what they mean? Why don't they do what they say they're gonna do? Here's why your father never taught you this. Because his father never taught him. Because we've been conditioned to believe that understanding, that seeing reality clearly makes you cynical. That strategic thinking makes you somehow less good. But here's what I've learned after watching men destroy themselves with naive idealism. Ignorance isn't virtue, it's weakness. And weakness doesn't serve anybody. So why didn't anyone prepare you for this? Simple. Because they needed you predictable. They needed you to operate from emotion instead of understanding. They needed you to give your loyalty freely and unconditionally. They needed you to be the guy who does what he's told and doesn't ask too many questions. Well, I'm about to make you unpredictable. I'm about to give you the framework that every successful person uses, but pretends they don't. I'm about to show you how to see the game everyone's playing while pretending there's no game at all. And if that makes you uncomfortable, good. Because comfort is the enemy of growth. And growth is the only thing that separates the men who control their lives from the ones who get controlled by everyone else. Have you ever wondered why some guys just seem to have this quiet authority? Why people naturally defer to them without them having to demand it? Why they never seem surprised by how people behave? It's because they understand something you don't yet. Here's the first truth that's gonna sting. People aren't rational. They never were. They never will be. And once you accept this, everything starts making sense. Your father probably taught you that if you just present the facts clearly enough, people will see the logic and make the right choice. He taught you that good intentions matter more than results. He taught you that fairness is something you can expect from the world. He was wrong. And it wasn't his fault. He was taught the same lies. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. For everyone can see and few can feel." Translation: people make decisions based on how things look, not how they actually are. They care more about the story they can tell themselves than the truth they have to live with. Watch this play out everywhere. Your friend who complains about being broke while ordering DoorDash every night. Your coworker who says the company doesn't value hard work, then shows up late 3 times a week. The woman who says she wants emotional intimacy but pulls away every time you're actually vulnerable. These aren't bad people. They're human people. And humans are wired to avoid discomfort, seek immediate gratification, and protect their self-image above almost everything else. Most men try to win by being right. They present facts. They make logical arguments. They expect people to change their minds when presented with better information. Then they get frustrated when it doesn't work. They think the other person is stupid, or stubborn, or just doesn't get it. But the man who understands human nature, he wins by understanding that facts don't change minds. Feelings do. He doesn't try to logic someone into something. He shows them a version of themselves they want to be. He makes the right choice feel good and the wrong choice feel uncomfortable. This isn't manipulation, it's communication. Because if you can't influence people, you can't help them. And if you can't help them, what's the point of being right? Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the Roman Empire, wrote in his private journals, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." But here's what he also understood. While happiness comes from within, effectiveness comes from understanding the world as it is, not as you wish it were. Aurelius never had to demand respect. People gave it automatically. Not because of his title, but because of how he carried himself. He understood that true authority doesn't come from position. It comes from competence, consistency, and the quiet confidence of a man who knows what he knows. Seneca, another Stoic philosopher, put it this way: every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. The old you, the one who expected fairness, who gave loyalty without thinking, who tried to win with logic alone, he has to die for the real you to be born. This isn't about becoming cold or calculating. It's about becoming effective. Because ineffective good intentions help nobody, and effective action helps everybody. Look at any man you genuinely respect. Not fear, not admire from a distance, but actually respect. I guarantee he understands these principles whether he's conscious of it or not. He doesn't explain himself to people who can't affect his life. He doesn't give his energy to people who don't reciprocate. He doesn't try to convince people who aren't ready to be convinced. He's learned something that most men never figure out. Your time, your energy, your attention, your loyalty. These are your most valuable assets, and you can't afford to give them away to people who don't value them. Now, let me tell you about the first uncomfortable truth that's gonna make everything click into place. Most people will take as much as you're willing to give, and then resent you for not giving more. This one's gonna hurt, because you've lived it. You're the guy everyone comes to when they need something. You're reliable. You're helpful. You solve problems. And somehow, instead of appreciation, you get taken for granted. Here's why. When you're always available, you train people to see you as a resource, not a person. When you always say yes, your yes becomes worthless. When you never set boundaries, people assume you don't have any needs of your own. The man who's always giving becomes invisible. People stop seeing him as someone with his own goals, his own struggles, his own need for support. He becomes the emotional vending machine. Insert problem, receive solution. And here's the really messed up part. The people who take the most from you will be the first to call you selfish when you finally say no. Because in their mind, your job is to give. Your job is to be available. Your job is to put their needs before your own. Breaking this pattern isn't about becoming selfish. It's about becoming selective. It's about understanding that your willingness to help is valuable precisely because it's limited. Scarcity creates value. Abundance creates contempt. The second uncomfortable truth goes even deeper. People respect boundaries more than they respect generosity. Your father probably taught you to be generous with your time, your energy, your resources. He probably said that helping others is always the right thing to do. And in an ideal world, he'd be right. But we don't live in an ideal world. We live in a world where people test boundaries to see what they can get away with, where they push until they hit resistance, where they respect people who respect themselves enough to say no. The man with clear boundaries doesn't have to enforce them often, because people sense them and adjust accordingly. The man without boundaries spends his whole life fighting battles that shouldn't exist. Think about the people in your life who you respect most. Are they pushovers? Are they available 24/7? Do they say yes to everything? Hell no. They're selective about their time. They're protective of their energy. They help when they can, but they don't sacrifice themselves for people who wouldn't do the same. This doesn't make them selfish. It makes them sustainable. Because you can't help people from an empty tank. You can't be strong for others if you're weak yourself. You can't give what you don't have. And here's the third truth, the one that's hardest to accept because it goes against everything you've been taught about being a good man. Your loyalty is only as valuable as your ability to withdraw it. You were raised to believe that loyalty is unconditional, that once you commit to someone, you stick with them no matter what, that walking away makes you weak or unreliable. But unconditional loyalty isn't loyalty, it's codependence. And codependence doesn't serve anybody. Real loyalty is a contract. Both parties contribute. Both parties benefit. Both parties hold up their end of the deal. When someone consistently breaks that contract, continuing to honor it isn't noble. It's enabling. The friend who only calls when he needs something isn't your friend. He's your user. The company that preaches family values while treating you like a replaceable part isn't your family. It's your exploiter. The woman who expects your commitment while keeping her options open isn't your partner. She's your placeholder. A man who can't withdraw his loyalty has no leverage. A man with no leverage has no power. A man with no power can't protect the people who actually deserve his protection. Being strategically loyal doesn't make you disloyal. It makes your loyalty mean something. Because when someone knows you choose to be there, rather than having to be there, your presence becomes a gift instead of an expectation. Now here's what I need you to understand. This isn't optional. This isn't some nice-to-have skill that might come in handy someday. This is survival. Because while you're operating from the old playbook, being nice, giving loyalty freely, trying to win with logic, everyone else is playing by the real rules. And they're winning, while you're wondering why you keep losing. You know that feeling when you leave a conversation and realize you got played? When you said yes to something you didn't want to do? When you gave someone the benefit of the doubt and they used it against you? That's what happens when you don't understand the game. It starts small. You let people interrupt you in meetings. You don't call out disrespectful behavior. You make excuses for people who don't show up for you the way you show up for them. You think you're being the bigger person, but what you're actually doing is training the world to treat you like you don't matter. And the world is a fast learner. 5 years from now, if nothing changes, you'll be that guy. You know the one. He's competent, he's reliable, he's helpful, and nobody really thinks about him. He's the supporting character in everyone else's story. He's the guy who makes things work, but never gets the credit. He knows it's his own fault. He knows he trained people to treat him this way. But he doesn't know how to change it without becoming someone he doesn't recognize. 10 years from now, it gets worse. The resentment builds. The self-sacrifice becomes self-destruction. He starts making enemies out of the people he tried hardest to help. Because when you give without receiving, eventually that generosity turns toxic. Eventually, that kindness becomes manipulation. Eventually, that loyalty becomes a chain that strangles both people. He becomes the angry nice guy, The one who does things for people and then gets upset when they don't appreciate it enough. The one who keeps score of every favor and feels cheated when the ledger doesn't balance. The one who mistakes his inability to say no for virtue and other people's ability to take advantage for evil. This is what happens when you don't learn these principles. You don't just fail to get what you want. You become someone you don't want to be. But here's the thing that's going to surprise you. Once you understand these principles, applying them is actually easier than what you're doing now. Because swimming against human nature is exhausting. Swimming with it is effortless. First thing you gotta do is start seeing people as they are, not as you want them to be. Stop giving people credit for good intentions when their actions consistently show you who they are. Stop making excuses for people who don't make excuses for you. Stop interpreting unclear communication in the most charitable way possible. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. The first time. Not the third time, not after they've proven it beyond a reasonable doubt, not after you've given them every possible benefit of every possible doubt. The first time. This doesn't make you cynical, it makes you realistic. And realism is the foundation of every successful relationship, whether personal or professional. Most men waste years of their lives trying to fix people who don't want to be fixed, trying to change people who don't want to change, trying to help people who aren't asking for help. Meanwhile, the people who would actually appreciate their effort go unnoticed because all their energy is tied up in these one-way relationships. Next, you need to make your availability scarce. This one's uncomfortable because it goes against your instincts. You want to be helpful. You want to be there for people. You want to be the guy people can count on. And you should be, for the people who deserve it. But being available to everyone means you're not really available to anyone. Your time gets fragmented. Your energy gets diluted. Your attention becomes scattered. And scattered attention helps nobody. The most successful men I know in business, in relationships, in life, they all understand this principle. They're not available 24/7. They don't respond to every text immediately. They don't say yes to every request. And because of this scarcity, when they do give their time and attention, it means something. Start small. Don't respond to non-urgent messages immediately. Take time to consider requests before automatically saying yes. Let calls go to voicemail sometimes. Give yourself space to think before reacting. This isn't about being rude or unavailable. This is about training people to respect your time by respecting it yourself. Third thing, communicate through your actions, not your explanations. Most men try to change how people see them by explaining themselves better. They think if they can just find the right words, people will understand their value. They think if they can just articulate their boundaries clearly enough, people will respect them. But people don't listen to what you say. They watch what you do. And what you do consistently becomes what they expect from you. You don't need to explain why you can't help someone this time. You just say you can't. You don't need to justify your decisions to people who can't affect your life. You just make the decision and move on. You don't need to convince people of your worth. You just demonstrate it through your choices. The man who has to explain his value doesn't have any. The man who has to demand respect doesn't deserve any. The man who has to announce his boundaries doesn't have any. But the man who lives his values, who enforces his boundaries quietly, who demonstrates his worth through his actions, that man commands attention without demanding it. And this is the big one. Become comfortable with other people's discomfort. This is where most men fail, because this is where you have to choose between being liked and being respected, between being comfortable and being effective, between being the nice guy and being the good man. When you start applying these principles, some people aren't gonna like it. The people who are used to unlimited access to your time and energy are gonna be upset when that access gets restricted. The people who are used to one-way relationships are gonna be confused when you start expecting reciprocity. And your instinct is gonna be to backtrack, to apologize, to go back to the old way of doing things, to prioritize their comfort over your boundaries. Don't, because their discomfort is temporary, but the respect you earn by maintaining your standards is permanent. The people who matter will adjust. They'll respect the new boundaries. They'll appreciate your time more when it's scarce. They'll value your help more when it's selective. And the people who don't adjust, they're showing you who they really are. They're showing you that they valued what you could give them more than who you actually are. They're showing you that your friendship was conditional. Conditional on your willingness to sacrifice yourself for their benefit. Let them go. Make room for the people who see your worth without you having to prove it constantly. Here's what's beautiful about this. When you stop trying so hard to be liked, people start liking you more. When you stop being available to everyone, the people who matter value your time more. When you stop giving your loyalty freely, people start working to earn it. It's counterintuitive, but it works because it's based on how people actually operate, not how we wish they operated. The man who's hard to impress becomes worth impressing. The man who's selective with his attention makes his attention valuable. The man who can walk away holds all the power in any relationship. This isn't about becoming cold or calculating. This is about becoming someone whose yes means something because they're capable of saying no. Someone whose friendship is valuable because it's earned, not assumed. Someone whose respect matters because it's not given automatically. You've probably noticed this already. The people you respect most aren't the ones who try hardest to please you. They're the ones who have clear standards and stick to them. They're the ones who help when they can, but don't sacrifice themselves when they can't. They're the ones who show up when it matters, but don't feel obligated to show up for everything. Have you ever wondered why some guys just seem to have this quiet authority? Why people naturally listen to them without them having to raise their voice? Why they never seem desperate or needy, even when they want something? It's because they understand something most men never figure out. Your power doesn't come from what you're willing to give up. It comes from what you're willing to walk away from. So here we are. I've just given you the framework that separates the men who control their lives from the ones who get controlled by everyone else. Your father didn't teach you this because he probably didn't know it himself. Our society doesn't teach this because they need predictable, manageable men who put everyone else's needs before their own. Men who give their loyalty without thinking, who sacrifice themselves without question, who operate from guilt instead of clarity. But you're not that man anymore. You understand that people are emotional, not rational. That your availability is valuable precisely because it's limited. That loyalty without reciprocity is just being used. That boundaries aren't walls. They're the foundation of every healthy relationship. This isn't about becoming manipulative or cruel. This is about becoming effective. This is about understanding the game everyone else is playing while pretending there's no game at all. Because here's the truth they don't want you to know. When you operate from strength instead of need, from choice instead of obligation, from clarity instead of confusion, everybody wins. The people who deserve your time get more of it. The people who deserve your loyalty value it more. The people who deserve your respect feel it more deeply. And the people who don't deserve these things, they move on to easier targets. They find someone else who hasn't figured this out yet. Someone else who's still operating from the old playbook. It is better to be respected than liked. Better to be valued than taken for granted. Better to be chosen than needed. Better to be feared than ignored. And fear doesn't mean terror. It means the healthy recognition that you have options, that you can walk away, that you're not desperate for anyone's approval or validation. You now have the knowledge to never be taken for granted again, to never wonder why people don't respect your time, to never question why your generosity goes unappreciated. Use it wisely. Use it with integrity. Use it to build the life you actually want, instead of the life everyone else expects you to live. And remember, I probably shouldn't have taught you this, but here we are. If this opened your eyes to something you've been feeling but couldn't articulate, hit that subscribe button right now. Because this is just the beginning. I'm going to show you the thinking patterns that separate the men who thrive from the ones who just survive. And if you're ready to dive deeper into the psychology of respect and influence, check out the next video where I break down the single most powerful principle for earning people's attention without demanding it. But don't watch it if you're not ready to see how deep this actually goes. Until next time, I'll see you in the next video.